Nero Wolfe and the Starlight telegram. It was a Wednesday when the first telegram arrived, though I didn't discover it until 2:30 on what had technically become Thursday morning. I'd been out late at the Copacabana with Lily Rowan, and when I climbed the 7 steps to the brownstone stoop, something pale caught my eye against the dark mat. An envelope, unmarked, cream-colored stock, expensive. I bent to retrieve it, and from inside the vestibule came a low rumble, Caesar's warning growl, the kind that meant he'd sensed something off-kilter before I had. Through the bulletproof glass panels beside the door, I could see all 5 Dobermans alert in the hallway, ears pricked, bodies tense. Mars was already at the inner door, his muscular frame coiled like a spring. "Easy," I called through the glass as I fitted my key into the new Seagull lock Wolfe had installed last month. 3 tumblers instead of 2, another sign that our normally immovable employer was feeling less invulnerable than usual. The dogs parted for me with military precision, Caesar to my left, Apollo scouting ahead, Minerva watching from the stairs with those unsettlingly intelligent eyes. Diana, the smallest and quickest, circled once around my legs before darting toward the kitchen, where a light showed under the door. Fritz Brenner stood at the stove in his bathrobe, heating milk in a copper saucepan. At 71, our chef had the constitution of a man 20 years younger, but even he looked tired. "You couldn't sleep either?" I asked. Mr. Wolfe had a difficult evening with the Miltania spectabilis. The humidity was wrong. He is still in the plant rooms. Fritz gestured with the wooden spoon. "You found something?" I held up the envelope. On the doorstep, no postmark, no messenger, just this. Fritz's expression darkened. The dogs were restless 2 hours ago. Caesar stood at the front door for 10 minutes. I looked out, saw nothing. I slit the envelope with my pocket knife. Inside was a telegram, not a Western Union form, but printed on plain paper in the distinctive capital letters of telegraph transmission. "Starlight cannot wait. Stop embassy holds 4 missing keys. Stop Danube flows east. At midnight, stop confirmation, essential stop." No signature, no addressee, no origin point. "Peculiar," Fritz murmured, reading over my shoulder. "That's one word for it." I checked the envelope again. Nothing. Someone wanted this delivered without going through official channels. Question is, why us? The answer, I suspected, would have to wait until morning. Nero Wolfe's bedtime was inviolate at 11 p.m., and his time in the plant rooms from 9 to 11 each morning was equally sacred. Disturbing either would require a crisis of nuclear proportions. I folded the telegram into my pocket and accepted a cup of chamomile tea from Fritz. The Dobermans had settled somewhat, but Caesar remained stationed by the front door, his dark eyes fixed on the vestibule as if expecting another uninvited delivery. It wouldn't be the last time his instincts proved sharper than mine. At 11:15 the next morning, Nero Wolfe descended in the elevator from the plant rooms, crossed the hall with his peculiar grace for a man weighing 1/7 of a ton, and entered the office. Thursday. The day stretched ahead with no appointments, no clients, and I'd hoped no murders. Hope, as usual, was naive. Wolfe settled into the oversized chair behind his desk, arranged the copy of Brillat-Savarin's Physiologie du Goût he'd been rereading, and rang for beer. Only then did he acknowledge my presence with a fractional movement of his massive head. "Good morning, Archie. You were late coming in last night." 2:30. Found this on our doorstep. I placed the telegram on his desk blotter. He picked it up with his fingertips as if it might be contagious, read it twice, and set it down with evident distaste. Preposterous. That was my second reaction. My first was, somebody's playing games. A game is entertainment. This is a provocation. He opened the first of 2 bottles of Remmers Fritz had brought. Starlight, embassy, Danube, the vocabulary of espionage, melodrama. Someone wishes to entangle us in matters of state. You're probably right. So we ignore it? We do. That settled, I thought, until the doorbell rang at 11:40. Through the one-way glass panel, I could see Inspector Lionel T. Kramer of Manhattan Homicide, on our stoop, his jaw already working on an unlighted cigar. The dogs had materialized in the hall again, and Mars gave a single sharp bark, the one that meant outsider with authority. I let Kramer in. He nodded at the Dobermans with the wary respect of a man who'd once made the mistake of approaching Wolfe's desk too aggressively and gotten Caesar's teeth an inch from his wrist. "Goodwin, Wolfe in the office. He's expecting me now. Kramer pushed past into the office without waiting for invitation. Rude, but then, he usually was. Wolfe didn't look up from his book. Inspector, you haven't called first, therefore the matter is urgent and you need me. My fee structure. A man is dead, Wolfe, foreign national, found in his hotel room at the Waldorf Towers at 7 o'clock this morning. Name's Gregor Landau, attaché to the Calvarian embassy. Know him. Wolfe's eyes moved from Brillat Savarin to Kramer's face. Something shifted in his expression, the faintest tightening around his mouth. I do not know anything about Starlight telegrams, coded messages, embassy keys. I felt my spine straighten. Wolfe's eyes flicked to me, then back to Kramer. Why do you ask? Wolfe's voice had gone dangerously soft. Kramer pulled a folded paper from his inside pocket and dropped it on the desk. Because someone wrote this on the notepad beside his body. In pencil. Probably the last thing he did before someone crushed his windpipe. I came around the desk to look. The handwriting was shaky, letters crammed together. Wolfe stared at the paper, then at the telegram I'd found, lying beside it now like matching puzzle pieces. When was he killed? Wolfe asked quietly. Medical examiner puts it between midnight and 2 a.m. Wednesday night, technically Thursday morning. The exact window when someone had delivered that telegram to our door. Kramer sat down without being invited. Here's what I know. Landau was supposed to meet someone at 11 p.m. Wednesday. He told the hotel desk he'd be out until late. He came back around 11:30 alone. At 1 a.m., a housekeeper heard voices in his suite, Landau's and someone else's, speaking a language she didn't recognize. By 2:30, nothing. By 7, he's dead on the floor, and the suite's been tossed. Professional job. And yet he had time to write a message, I asked, hidden under his body. The killer must not have seen it. Wolfe pulled at his lower lip, a sign of deep thought or deep annoyance, sometimes both. Who discovered him? The housekeeper came in to check on the Do Not Disturb sign that had been up too long, found him on the carpet, neck bruised like he'd been squeezed by a gorilla. Nothing stolen that we can tell. Wallet intact, watch still there. But his briefcase was empty, and the embassy's going nuclear over what might have been inside. The embassy, Wolfe said slowly, will want discretion. The embassy wants silence. They've already called the commissioner. Political pressure from the top. The Calvarian government is allied with the State Department on some trade thing. I don't follow that stuff, but I'm supposed to investigate without investigating, if you catch my meaning. And naturally you resist. Wolfe's tone held a hint of approval. I'm a homicide cop, not a diplomat. Someone strangled a man in my city. I want to know who and why. Kramer pointed at the telegram. That message, does it mean something to you? Wolfe was silent for 10 seconds. Then, no. A lie. I could always tell. Kramer probably could too. But he let it pass. Fine. Then I'll just mention that someone might want to target you next. Seeing as how you got the same message as a dead man. Might want to lock your doors extra tight. Those dogs of yours been acting strange. They have, I admitted. Thought so. Kramer stood. I'm not asking you to take this case, Wolfe. I know how you feel about political hot potatoes. Just thought you should know someone's playing with fire in your neighborhood, and you might smell smoke before I do. He moved toward the door, then turned back. One more thing. Landau had a visitor register at the hotel. Last 3 people to sign in to see him. A journalist named Quentyn Blackwood, a translator called Helena Vasari, and a courier, no name given, just document delivery service. None of them are talking, yet, after Kramer left, Wolfe sat motionless for 3 full minutes. The Dobermans had followed the inspector out, but Minerva returned and lay down beside Wolfe's desk, her way of offering silent protection. Archie, Wolfe said finally, we are not accepting this case. Understood. Someone is attempting to manipulate us, to use proximity and coincidence as leverage. Absolutely. This matter reeks of political intrigue, international complications, and governmental interference. All things I despise. Couldn't agree more. Then why? Wolfe demanded. Are you smiling? Because I knew him. I'd worked for Nero Wolfe for 15 years, and I knew the signs, the way he'd pulled at his lip, the way he'd lied to Kramer, The way his eyes had lingered on those two messages, matching like evil twins. "I'm not taking the case," he insisted. "Of course not." Phew. He picked up his book again. "Leave me. I have reading to do." I left him there, surrounded by his fortress of denial, while outside the brownstone someone with a taste for coded messages and midnight murder was waiting to see what the great Nero Wolfe would do next. What they didn't know, what nobody ever seemed to know, was that once Wolfe's curiosity was genuinely piqued, denial was just the opening act. By Friday morning, Wolfe still insisted he wasn't interested. He'd spent the previous evening in the plant rooms until midnight, fussing over his Cattleyas with Theodore Horstman. He'd consumed 3 bottles of beer with lunch, and 4 with dinner. He'd read 70 pages of Brillat Savarin. He had, in short, performed a masterclass in studied indifference. Which is why, when I suggested over breakfast that I might wander by the Calvarian embassy, purely as reconnaissance, mind you, he responded with something remarkably close to enthusiasm. Idle curiosity would be natural, he conceded, slicing into Fritz's anchovy omelette. You might observe without commitment. Just observation. Nothing more. He paused. If, however, you happen to encounter any of the individuals Inspector Kramer mentioned, it would be wasteful not to gather impressions. Purely for academic interest. Precisely. So at 10 o'clock I found myself in the financial district, standing across from the Calvarian embassy, a sleek Art Deco building at the edge of Battery Park, all chrome and limestone, diplomatic flags snapping in the autumn wind. The entrance was guarded by a single uniformed officer, who looked less military and more ornamental. I'd dressed for the part, good suit, briefcase, empty, confident stride. I walked in like I owned the place. The reception area was marble and hushed efficiency, potted palms, leather chairs, a massive desk where a severe woman in her 50s guarded access like Cerberus at the gates. Her nameplate read, Ingred Kohler, Administrative Director. "May I help you?" Her accent was clipped, somewhere between German and Scandinavian. "Archie Goodwin. I'm here regarding Gregor Landau." Her expression flickered. "Grief, quickly controlled. You are with the police?" "Private investigator." "Nero Wolfe's office." The name registered. Everyone in Manhattan knew Wolfe, at least by reputation. She studied me for a moment, then gestured to a chair. "Please wait." She disappeared through a side door. I waited 3 minutes, noting details. Fresh flowers on every surface, an oil painting of mountains, Calvaria's national symbol, and security cameras in all 4 corners. Not the kind of place where things happened by accident. A man emerged. Early 40s, impeccable tailoring, salt and pepper hair styled like a movie star. His smile was practiced, but didn't reach his eyes. "Mr. Goodwin, I am Dmitri Kessler, Deputy Chief of Mission. May I ask what brings Nero Wolfe's investigator to our embassy?" "Inspector Kramer asked us to consult on Gregor Landau's murder." A lie, but a useful one. Kessler's reaction was instructive. A fractional tightening of his jaw, followed by excessive diplomacy. A tragedy. Mr. Landau was a valued colleague. However, I'm afraid this matter is quite sensitive. The police have been asked to conduct their investigation with discretion. Discretion. I let the word hang. Is that why Mr. Landau's briefcase was empty when they found him? Kessler's smile went rigid. "I know nothing about a briefcase." "Of course not. What about Starlight telegrams?" His face went carefully blank, the look of a man who'd just heard something he desperately wished he hadn't. "I don't understand the reference." 4 missing keys. The Danube flowing east. "Mr. Goodwin." Kessler's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "I must ask you to leave. This embassy cannot involve itself in speculation about Mr. Landau's personal affairs." "His murder was personal?" "His death is a police matter. Good day." He turned on his heel, but not before I caught something in his eyes. Not just fear, calculation. I tried a different angle. Who was Landau supposed to meet Wednesday night? Kessler paused mid-step. When he turned back, the diplomatic mask had slipped slightly. "How did you?" He stopped himself. "No one. He met no one. Someone heard voices in his room around 1 a.m. Then the hotel staff is mistaken." He nodded to Ingred Kohler. "Miss Kohler will show you out." But before she could move, a door opened at the far end of the reception area, and a woman stepped through, early 30s, dark hair pulled back severely, dressed in a charcoal suit that suggested authority beyond her years. She carried a leather portfolio and moved with purpose until she saw me. Then she stopped. Our eyes met for perhaps 2 seconds, but I'm good at reading faces, and hers was a book written in anxiety and exhaustion. She knew something, maybe everything. "Helena," Kessler said sharply, "return to your office, please." Helena Vasari had to be. The translator who'd visited Landau hours before his death. She opened her mouth as if to speak, then closed it. Her knuckles were white on the portfolio. She glanced at Kessler, at me, then turned and walked quickly back through the door. "Miss Vasari is not available for questioning," Kessler said. "I insist you leave now, Mr. Goodwin." Ingred Kohler had come around the desk, and the ornamental guard from outside had appeared in the doorway. "Time to make an exit." "I'll give Kramer your regards," I said pleasantly. "I'm sure he'll be back soon." Outside, I walked 2 blocks north and waited. Sometimes persistence pays off. 15 minutes later, Helena Vasari emerged from a side entrance, head down, walking fast. I fell into step beside her. "Miss Vasari, Archie Goodwin, I think you want to talk." She kept walking. "Go away. Gregor Landau is dead. You visited him Wednesday night. You know something about Starlight telegrams." She stopped abruptly, spinning to face me. "How do you know that name?" "Which name?" "Yours. That's public record. Or Starlight. That's more complicated." Her eyes darted around the street. "Not here. There's a cafe on Pearl Street. Corner booth in the back. 20 minutes. She walked away before I could respond. I found a phone booth and called the brownstone. Fritz answered. "Mr. Wolfe is in the office," he said. "Shall I connect you?" "Please." A click. Then Wolfe's voice. "Yes." I poked the embassy. Things poked back. "The translator, Helena Vasari, wants to meet. She's spooked." A pause. "Where?" "Cafe on Pearl Street. 20 minutes. Go. Listen carefully. Report precisely." He hung up. Still not taking the case, I thought, grinning as I headed for Pearl Street. The cafe was called Merchant's Rest, one of those narrow Manhattan establishments squeezed between buildings like an afterthought. Helena Vasari was already there, seated in the back booth with a cup of untouched coffee. She'd positioned herself facing the door, smart. I slid in across from her. "Thanks for meeting. I'm not sure I should be here." Her accent was faint but distinctive. Educated European, probably Italian. "If Kessler finds out, then let's make this quick. You visited Gregor Landau, Wednesday night. What time?" "Around 9. I left by 9:30. "Why did you visit him?" She hesitated, weighing her options. "He called me that afternoon, said he needed help with a translation. Urgent." "Translation of what?" He wouldn't say over the phone. When I arrived at his suite, he seemed, she searched for the word, distressed, paranoid. He kept looking at the door as if expecting someone. What did he want translated? A series of telegrams, old ones, from the 1940s. He had photocopies. My pulse quickened. What did they say? They were in code, but a particular kind of code. During the war, certain embassies used what they called Starlight protocols, messages that looked like ordinary telegrams but contained hidden instructions. The key was in the word order and specific phrases. "Starlight protocols," I repeated. "So the telegram message is exactly that style. When I saw you at the embassy and heard you mention it." She lowered her voice. "Gregor was convinced someone was using the old protocols again. He'd received one himself, 2 weeks ago. He thought it was a threat." "A threat about what?" "That's what I don't know. He wouldn't tell me. He just asked me to confirm that the telegrams were authentic, that they followed the proper format. I told him they did. He thanked me and practically pushed me out the door. That was the last time I saw him alive." I leaned forward. Who else was investigating these telegrams? "A journalist, Quentyn Blackwood. He's been writing about Cold War espionage, declassified documents. Gregor mentioned him. And the courier? The one who visited him that night." Her expression darkened. "I don't know anything about a courier, but Gregor did mention expecting one more delivery before he could prove his theory." "What theory?" "That someone at the embassy was selling secrets. Using the old Starlight protocols to communicate with buyers, Gregor found evidence, documents in the archives that shouldn't be there, messages that had been answered when they should have been filed away forever. He told you this? Only fragments. He was afraid, said if he was right, it meant someone high up was compromised, someone he worked with every day. I absorbed this. Who knew he was investigating? I don't know. He was careful. But someone must have realized. Her hands trembled around the coffee cup. Mr. Goodwin, I think I'm in danger. If whoever killed Gregor knows I saw those telegrams, does anyone else know you helped him? Kessler knows I visited. That's standard. We log all embassy visits. But he doesn't know why. She met my eyes. At least I don't think he does. What about Gregor's office? His files? Sealed by order of the ambassador. No one's allowed in. Convenient. Too convenient. She stood abruptly. I have to go. I've already said too much. Miss Vasari, Helena, if you're in danger, you need protection. Real protection. From whom? The embassy? The police? They're all compromised somehow. She pulled a business card from her purse and wrote a number on the back. This is my home number. If you learn anything at all, call me, day or night. She left quickly, weaving through the lunchtime crowd. I sat alone, thinking. The case which Wolfe still insisted wasn't a case was taking shape. A dead diplomat investigating secret communications, a translator who knew too much, an embassy that wanted silence, and somewhere in the shadows, someone who killed to keep those old Starlight protocols buried. I paid for the coffee and headed for my next appointment. Quentyn Blackwood's office was in a converted warehouse in Chelsea. 3rd floor, no elevator. The door was unmarked except for a brass number, 312. I knocked. It's open. I entered into controlled chaos, filing cabinets overflowing, papers stacked on every surface, photographs pinned to corkboards covering 3 walls. Blackwood sat behind a metal desk, cigarette dangling from his lips, typing with 2 fingers on an old royal. He was maybe 50, with the weathered look of a man who'd seen too much and believed too little. He looked up. Help you? Archie Goodwin. I'm investigating Gregor Landau's murder. Join the club. Police already grilled me for 2 hours yesterday. He gestured to a chair piled with newspapers. Move those. Sit. I moved them. What did you tell the police? That I visited Landau Wednesday evening at 7. We talked for 45 minutes. I left. He was alive. What did you talk about? Blackwood studied me through smoke. You're not a cop. Private. That's right. Working for who? Myself, at the moment. Though I expect that'll change. He grinned, a cynical expression that had seen everything twice. You work for Nero Wolfe. I know the name. Read about that murder at that restaurant. What was it last year? Impressive stuff. He stubbed out the cigarette. Fine, I'll talk. What do you want to know? Start with why you visited Landau. I'm writing a book about post-war espionage, specifically communication methods used by embassies for off-the-books diplomacy. Landau contacted me 3 weeks ago, said he had information about Starlight protocols. Let me guess, old coded telegrams from the 9th. Blackwood's eyebrows rose. You know about that? Learning fast. What did Landau tell you? That someone was using the old protocols again. Recently, he'd found messages in the embassy archives that matched the format perfectly, but they were dated within the last 6 months. He thought it was impossible. Those protocols were discontinued in 1947, classified ever since. Unless someone remembered them. Exactly. Or had access to the original code books. Blackwood lit another cigarette. Here's the thing about Starlight protocols. They weren't just codes. They were specifically designed for deniability. If a message was intercepted, it looked like routine diplomatic traffic. Only someone with the key could decode it. And Landau thought someone had the key. More than that, he thought someone at the embassy was using it to coordinate something. He wouldn't say what, just that he needed proof before he could go public. Did he have proof? He said he was close, waiting for one more confirmation. Then he'd bring everything to the authorities, the real authorities, not embassy brass. Did he mention who he suspected? Blackwood shook his head. He was paranoid about that. Wouldn't give names, but he implied it was someone with access to secure files, Someone senior. Kessler? The deputy chief? Maybe. Or ambassador himself, though Landau seemed to think it was someone more operational, someone who handled documents regularly. I considered this. What about a courier? Document delivery service? Funny you mention that. Landau asked me if I knew any courier services that specialized in diplomatic documents. Said he wanted to track a delivery. When? Wednesday afternoon, during our meeting. He seemed obsessed with it, kept checking his watch, like he was expecting something. The telegram under our door, delivered between midnight and 2 a.m., the same window when Landau was killed. Do you know the courier's name? I asked. No, but I can tell you this, there are only 3 services in Manhattan cleared for diplomatic deliveries. They all require security bonds and background checks. I have their names somewhere. He rummaged through papers. Here, Mercury Express, Statesman Couriers, and Imperial Document Services. I wrote them down. One more question. Who else knew about Landau's investigation? Besides me, and apparently you? The translator, Helena something. She helped him verify the telegram formats, and possibly whoever he suspected, if they'd caught wind of it. Which means his killer. Most likely. Blackwood leaned back. Look, Goodwin, I'm a journalist. I chase stories. But this one, he shook his head. This one's dangerous. Landau was careful, professional, and someone still got to him. You're walking into something bigger than one dead diplomat. I usually do. Occupational hazard. Then watch your back, and tell Nero Wolfe that if he solves this, I want an exclusive. He grinned. Better story than anything I could write. By the time I returned to the brownstone, it was 4:30. I found Wolfe in the office, reading, with Caesar lying beside his chair, an unusual position that suggested Wolfe had been thinking about security. Report, he said without looking up. I gave him everything. Helena's information about the Starlight protocols, Blackwood's confirmation of Landau's investigation, the names of the courier services, and my growing certainty that someone at the embassy was selling secrets. When I finished, Wolfe set down his book. The circle narrows, he said. Landau discovered the revival of an obsolete communication method. He investigated. He confided in 2 people, a translator and a journalist, both outside the embassy structure. He requested a final delivery, presumably additional evidence, and was killed before it arrived. Or because it arrived, I suggested. Maybe the killer intercepted whatever Landau was expecting. Perhaps, or perhaps the delivery was the trap. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. The telegram under our door, when precisely did it arrive? Between midnight and 2 a.m. The same window as Landau's murder. Not coincidence. He drummed his fingers on the desk. Someone wished to implicate us, or warn us, or, he paused, or provide us with the very evidence Landau died to protect. I felt a chill. You think that telegram is the delivery? The proof Landau was waiting for? Consider, Landau expects evidence. He is killed. Hours later, a nearly identical message appears at our door, a detective's door. The killer could not have known we would receive Kramer's visit, but someone else might have anticipated it. Someone who knew Landau's death would draw investigation, and who chose us specifically as recipients. An insurance policy, I said slowly. If Landau died, the evidence would still surface. Precisely. The question becomes, who sent it? Before I could answer, the doorbell rang. Through the glass I saw a young man in uniform, one of the diplomatic courier services. Apollo and Diana were already at the door, alert but not aggressive. I let the courier in, signed for a sealed envelope, and watched him leave. The envelope was addressed to Nero Wolfe, in printed block letters. No return address. I brought it to the office. Wolfe slit it open with his letter knife. Inside was another telegram, formatted identically to the first. Starlight. Confirms embassy keys hidden in Danube archives. Stop proof in Landau. File 73. Stop Kessler knows. Stop. Wolfe read it twice, then handed it to me. So much for being uninvolved, I said. Indeed, Wolfe's expression was grim. Someone has made involvement inevitable. The question is whether we are pawns in their game, or whether they are attempting to recruit us as players. Option 3. They're trying to get us killed. Also possible, he picked up the phone and dialed. Inspector Kramer, please. Nero Wolfe calling. He waited. Then, Inspector, I have information regarding the Landau case. Yes, I said I wasn't interested. I've reconsidered. I require access to Landau's office at the embassy. Tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock. Yes, I'm serious. Because, Inspector, someone is using me as a messenger, and I do not appreciate it. He hung up and looked at me. We are taking the case. I thought we might. Prepare to go to the embassy tomorrow. You will need to search Landau's office. I will provide a list of what to look for. You're not coming? Not yet. He glanced at Caesar, who had risen and moved to the front windows, staring out at the street. First, I wish to understand who is watching the brownstone, and why they believe I'm important enough to recruit. Outside, evening was settling over Manhattan. Somewhere in the city, a killer was watching, waiting to see if Nero Wolfe would do exactly what they expected, or something entirely different. Friday night passed without incident, unless you counted Wolfe consuming an entire roast duck and 4 bottles of beer while pretending to read. I'd seen him like this before, the illusion of calm masking intense mental activity. He was assembling pieces, constructing theories, and probably already 3 moves ahead of everyone else. Saturday morning arrived with frost on the windows and a city moving at weekend pace. Wolfe descended from the plant rooms at 11, settled into his chair, and said, Saturday's bank deposit must be made. This was code. We had no deposit. He wanted me out of the house. Right, I said. I'll take care of it. Take Apollo with you. He requires exercise. Also code. Wolfe never sent dogs on errands unless he wanted the brownstone to appear less defended than it was. I leashed Apollo, who tolerated this indignity with Doberman stoicism, and walked the 12 blocks to our bank. The deposit took 5 minutes. The walk back took 20 because Apollo insisted on investigating every lamppost and fire hydrant between here and West 35th Street. We returned at noon to find Inspector Kramer's car parked across from the brownstone, and Kramer himself pacing our stoop like a caged bear. Where's Wolfe? He demanded. Inside, presumably. Why? Because someone just tried to kill Helena Vasari. I unlocked the door fast. Kramer followed me in, past all 5 Dobermans who'd materialized in the hall like smoke. Wolfe looked up from his desk. Inspector, I assume you bring news. Your translator friend was attacked this morning, 8 a.m. Someone grabbed her outside her apartment, tried to force her into a car. She screamed. Neighbors came running. The guy took off. She's at the precinct now, giving a statement. I felt cold. Is she hurt? Shaken, bruised, but alive. Kramer pointed at Wolfe. She said she'd spoken to Archie Goodwin yesterday, about Landau, about Starlight telegrams. She thinks that's why she was targeted. Likely correct, Wolfe said calmly. Someone knows she possesses information. Information you've been collecting too. Kramer pulled out his cigar, remembered he was indoors, put it back. I'm here because I don't like patterns. First Landau dies, then mysterious telegrams show up at your door. Then someone attacks the translator. And through it all you sit here like Buddha on a mountaintop, pretending you're not interested. I am interested now, Wolfe said, hence my request for embassy access, which I'm making happen, against my better judgment. 9 a.m. Monday. The embassy's resisting, but the commissioner's applying pressure. You get 1 hour in Landau's office, supervised. Don't mess it up. I rarely do. Wolfe paused. Inspector, might I suggest protective custody for Ms. Vasari? Already arranged. She'll stay at a safe house until this blows over. Kramer moved toward the door. One more thing. The courier who delivered that telegram yesterday, Mercury Express, I sent someone to check them out. The delivery was logged, paid for in cash, ordered by phone, no name. The voice was male, accent described as foreign but vague, dead end. Not entirely dead, Wolfe murmured. Someone paid cash, which suggests avoidance of records. Someone used a phone, which means there's a number logged somewhere. Someone has intimate knowledge of courier services, diplomatic protocols, and this brownstone's address. Your point? That our mysterious messenger is either exceptionally cautious or exceptionally familiar with tradecraft, possibly both. After Kramer left, Wolfe sat in silence for a full minute. Then Archie. The dogs have been agitated since yesterday evening, Caesar particularly. I noticed. He keeps watching the street. As well he should. We are being observed. I am certain of it. I went to the window. The street looked normal. Cars parked, pedestrians passing, nothing remarkable. But Wolfe's instincts were rarely wrong. Want me to take a walk? See if anyone follows? No. I want you to remain here. If someone wishes to observe, let them. We will proceed as if unaware. He opened a beer. Tomorrow is Sunday. Monday I will require you at the embassy. Between now and then, I wish to review every detail of Starlight protocols. Fritz is retrieving books from my collection. Wartime intelligence procedures, diplomatic history, communication codes. We will educate ourselves. On what exactly? On how one might revive a protocol, dead for 30 years, and why. Sunday was devoted to research. Wolfe's collection of books on intelligence history was surprisingly extensive. 4 shelves in the alcove, ranging from academic texts to memoirs of former agents. I spent 8 hours reading about diplomatic codes, dead drops, embassy communications, and the elaborate cat-and-mouse games of the 1940s. Starlight protocols, I learned, were elegant in their simplicity. A telegram was sent containing normal-seeming text, often business or family messages, but specific words, when extracted according to a key, revealed hidden instructions. The key itself was verbal, changed monthly, distributed only to authorized personnel. The system had been used primarily by 3 embassies, Calvaria, its neighbor Moldania, and briefly by the Yugoslav government. All 3 were abolished after 1947, when new, more secure methods replaced them. For someone to use Starlight protocols in 2025 meant either access to original codebooks, supposedly destroyed, or reconstruction based on archived messages. Both scenarios suggested deep knowledge and careful planning. By Sunday evening, I had a headache and 17 pages of notes. Wolfe had read twice as much and taken no notes whatsoever, storing everything in that remarkable memory of his. The protocols were discontinued, he said over dinner, not because they were compromised, but because they were obsolete. Encryption technology evolved, yet obsolescence has virtues. These codes are not in any modern database, not taught to contemporary intelligence officers. They are in effect invisible to current surveillance. Perfect for someone selling secrets. Indeed, a buyer and seller could communicate openly using apparent gibberish, and even if intercepted, the message would be meaningless to anyone lacking the key. So how do we get the key? We don't. We get file 73 from Landau's office, and we determine what Kessler knows. That night I slept lightly, a habit from years of detective work. At 2:15 a.m., I woke to the sound of all 5 Dobermans barking in synchronized fury downstairs. I was out of bed and in the hall in seconds, pulling on pants, grabbing the 38 from my nightstand. Wolfe's door opened and he emerged in his yellow pajamas, moving with surprising speed. "The front door," he said. We descended together. The dogs were at the vestibule, Mars and Caesar in front, Apollo circling, Minerva and Diana positioned at the parlor entrance, strategic positioning that suggested they'd sensed an intruder. Through the bulletproof glass, I saw nothing. The street was empty, no movement. Then I looked down. Another envelope, cream-colored, unmarked. "Don't open it," I said. "Could be anything." "It's a telegram." Wolfe's voice was certain. "The 3rd delivery. Open it carefully." I used gloves from the hall closet, checked for wires or powder, found nothing. Inside was the same printed telegram format. "Starlight endgame Monday midnight stop embassy, roof access, Danube code 73 stop bring Wolfe, or Vasari dies, stop." The dogs had gone quiet, but their attention remained fixed on the door. Whoever had delivered this was gone. Wolfe took the telegram with one thick finger. Escalation. "They want you personally. At the embassy. Monday midnight." A trap, obviously. Obviously. So we don't go. "We go," Wolfe said. "But not as expected. Contact Kramer. Have him place Helena Vasari under maximum security. Contact Saul Panzer. I will require his assistance. And prepare firearms. We will need them." "You're actually planning to go to the embassy at midnight after getting a threatening telegram?" "I am planning to end this absurdity. Someone believes they can manipulate Nero Wolfe through threats and coded messages. They will learn otherwise." He moved toward the stairs. "In the morning, you will visit Landau's office as planned. I will remain here and prepare. Monday night, we will spring the trap, but from the inside. That's not exactly a detailed plan. The details will emerge once you've examined file 73. Until then, sleep. Monday will be strenuous. He climbed the stairs, leaving me alone with 5 vigilant Dobermans and a telegram demanding the impossible. Somewhere in Manhattan, someone was orchestrating an elaborate game. The pieces were moving, the board was set, and Nero Wolfe, who claimed to hate leaving his brownstone, had just agreed to walk into the lion's den. This was either brilliance or suicide. With Wolfe, it was usually both. Monday morning, 9 a.m. sharp, Inspector Kramer picked me up in an unmarked car, his expression suggesting he'd slept even less than I had. "Wolfe's not coming?" he asked as we drove south. "He'll make his appearance when it counts." Cryptic. I hate cryptic. He chewed his unlit cigar. "The embassy's agreed to 1 hour. Kessler will supervise personally. He's not happy." Neither am I. Someone tried to grab Helena Vasari. She's safe. 3 officers rotating shifts at the safe house. No one's getting near her. We pulled up to the Varian embassy at 8:50. Dmitri Kessler waited in the lobby, his diplomatic smile even more strained than before. "Mr. Goodwin, Inspector, I must protest this intrusion." "Noted," Kramer said. "Now take us to Landau's office." We rode a cramped elevator to the 4th floor. Landau's office was modest. Desk, filing cabinets, a single window overlooking the East River. The room had been sealed with official tape, which Kramer broke. "1 hour, Kessler said. "I will wait outside." "You'll wait inside," Kramer corrected. "Orders from the commissioner. You're our official witness." Kessler's jaw tightened, but he stayed. I started with the desk. Standard office supplies, a calendar with appointments, a framed photo of mountains, Calvaria again. The drawers were locked. I looked at Kramer. "We have a warrant," he said, producing a key. Inside the drawers, routine paperwork, pens, a half-eaten roll of antacids. Nothing useful. I moved to the filing cabinets. "What specifically are you looking for?" Kessler asked. "File 73. His reaction was immediate, a micro-expression of alarm, quickly masked. "I don't know what that refers to." "Sure you don't." I found the cabinet marked 6080 and started flipping through folders. 68, 69, 70, 71, 72. No 73. I checked twice. Definitive gap where it should be. "Someone removed it," Kramer said, coming to look over my shoulder. "Impossible," Kessler protested. "This office has been sealed since Landau's death." "Then where is it?" Kessler had no answer. I tried another approach. "Mr. Kessler, what exactly is file 73? "I told you, I don't know." You flinched when I mentioned it. "You know." His diplomatic composure cracked slightly. "It's a personnel file. Old records. Nothing relevant to current operations." "Whose personnel file?" "That's classified." Kramer stepped closer. "A man is dead. Classification doesn't mean much right now." Kessler looked between us, calculating. Finally, "It's a wartime file. Employee records from 1944 to 1947. Communications officers. The file should have been purged decades ago, but Landau was researching embassy history, preparing for an anniversary. He requested access to old archives and found something he shouldn't have. I don't know what he found, but if that file is missing," he stopped himself. "If it's missing," I finished, "then someone with access to this sealed office removed it. Someone internal." The implications hung in the air. Kramer and I exchanged looks. I spent the remaining 40 minutes searching every inch of that office. I found nothing else useful. No hidden notes, no mysterious documents, no smoking guns. But I did find, wedged behind a heating pipe near the window, a small metal key, unmarked, about 2 inches long. "What's that?" Kramer asked. "Not sure. Not a desk key or filing cabinet." I showed it to Kessler. "Recognize this?" He studied it. "No, but we have old storage facilities in the basement, historical archives. Keys like that might open document boxes from the 19... Can we access those archives?" "Not without special authorization from the ambassador." "Then get authorization." That will take days, perhaps weeks. Then we come back with a warrant, Kramer said flatly. Your choice. Kessler's expression soured. I will make a call. An hour later, we stood in the embassy basement, a warren of concrete rooms filled with metal shelving, document boxes, and the musty smell of old paper. A clerk named Werner, elderly and nervous, guided us through the labyrinth. Historical files, he explained in accented English, organized by year and department. What year do you need? 1945 to 1947. He led us deeper into the maze. The boxes were labeled with numbers and dates. I started checking locks against the key. On the 23rd box, marked Kayam-46J, the key fit. Inside, folders, telegram copies, personnel records. I rifled through carefully. There, at the bottom, a folder marked Starlight Protocol, Operational Keys. I pulled it out. Inside were typewritten pages, lists of words arranged in columns, dates beside each list, and notes about rotation schedules. The codebooks, the actual keys for decoding Starlight messages. This is what Landau found, I said. Kramer looked over my shoulder. These are 50 years old, but someone could reconstruct the system from them, learn the patterns, create new messages using the old format. I kept searching. At the bottom of the box was a newer document, photocopied, not original, dated 3 months ago. It appeared to be a list of names and numbers, bank account information, meeting locations. I couldn't tell. But clipped to it was a note in Landau's handwriting. K knows. Confronted Thursday. Must get to authorities before. The note ended there. Unfinished. Thursday, 2 days before his murder. K, Kramer said. Kessler? That's my guess. We took the entire box as evidence. Kessler protested but couldn't stop us legally. By noon, we were back at Kramer's precinct, spreading documents across a conference table. So here's what we have, Kramer said. Landau finds old Starlight protocols. He discovers someone's using them recently. He confronts someone, probably Kessler, on Thursday. Friday night he's murdered. The question is, what was being communicated? I thought about the telegram at our door. Embassy holds 4 missing keys. Danube flows east at midnight. Kramer pulled out a map of Manhattan. Danube doesn't mean a river. It's a code word. Maybe a location, a contact, or a person, I suggested. During the war, agents used geographical names as identifiers. What if Danube is someone's code name? Then who? Good question. I called the brownstone from Kramer's office. Fritz answered and connected me to Wolfe. I found the Starlight Protocol documents, I reported, original codebooks from the 1940s. Plus evidence, Landau confronted someone named K, probably Kessler, 2 days before his murder. There's a reference to Danube flows east at midnight. Danube, Wolfe repeated thoughtfully. East, midnight. These are not geographical references. They are temporal and directional. East suggests movement toward Europe. Midnight suggests conclusion or deadline. So our mysterious correspondent is announcing a final transaction. Something flows east. Information, documents, secrets at a specific time. The deadline is tonight, Monday, midnight. The telegram demanded you show up at the embassy at midnight. Precisely. Someone wishes to ensure I am present for the culmination of their scheme, either to silence me as they silenced Landau, or, he paused, or to position me as witness. Witness to what? To whatever flows east. Archie, return here immediately. We have much to prepare. I got back to the brownstone at 2 p.m. Wolfe was in the office with Saul Panzer, the best freelance operative in New York. Saul looked his usual unassuming self, medium height, average face, the kind of man who could disappear in a crowd and reappear as your best friend. Archie, he said, sounds like you're having an interesting week. That's one word for it. Wolfe had spread papers across his desk, the telegrams, my notes, photocopies of what I'd found in the embassy basement. He was studying them with the concentration of a chess master approaching endgame. Saul will accompany us tonight, Wolfe announced. He will enter the embassy from the service entrance at 11:30. You and I will arrive at midnight through the front. Kramer will have officers stationed outside, but they will not enter unless signaled. And what exactly are we doing at midnight? Attending an appointment. Someone wishes to demonstrate something, or negotiate, or threaten. We will oblige them, but on our terms. Your terms usually involve not leaving the brownstone. Exceptional circumstances. He set down his papers. I have deduced the nature of the Starlight revival. It is, as we suspected, a communication method for selling classified information. But the buyer is not simply another government. The buyer is a private collector, someone assembling intelligence for auction, perhaps, or blackmail. How do you know? The telegram's phrasing. Embassy holds 4 missing keys. This refers not to physical keys, but to 4 pieces of information. Documents, likely. The phrase Danube flows east indicates those documents will be transferred tonight, to someone East Europe, most probably. And confirmation essential means the seller requires verification of payment or receipt, a final meeting to exchange confirmation before the transfer becomes irreversible. He looked at me directly. Landau discovered this scheme. He confronted Kessler, or whomever K represents. He was killed to prevent exposure. Someone then decided to recruit me as a replacement witness, perhaps believing I would decode the telegrams and arrive at the same conclusion, but more publicly, more credibly. Why would they want that? Insurance. If the transaction goes wrong, if the buyer betrays the seller, evidence exists with an independent party. Me, I become unwitting protection. Saul leaned forward. So what do we do? We spring the trap, Wolfe said. But first, Archie, I require you to make 3 telephone calls. First to Inspector Kramer. Inform him we will be at the embassy at midnight and request his presence but not his intervention. Second, to Quentyn Blackwood. Tell him there will be a story tonight worth witnessing. Third, to Helena Vasari. Assure her she is safe and that her ordeal will end tonight. I made the calls. Kramer swore but agreed. Blackwood sounded thrilled. Helena sounded terrified but grateful. At 7 p.m., Fritz served an early dinner. Roast pork, German potato salad, apple strudel. Wolfe ate with methodical care, clearly fortifying himself. At 9 p.m., he summoned all 5 Dobermans to the office. You will remain here, he told them, as if they understood English. Possibly they did. Caesar, you are in command. Protect the brownstone. We will return before dawn. Caesar's deep brown eyes held what I swear was understanding. The other dogs settled around the office as if mounting guard. At 10:30, Saul left to position himself at the embassy. At 11:40, Wolfe and I prepared to leave. He wore his finest suit, midnight blue, tailored precisely to his massive frame. In his pocket, I knew, was a recording device. Small, modern, effective. My .38 was in my shoulder holster. Are you really sure about this? I asked. No, Wolfe said honestly, but I am certain that retreat is impossible. Someone has made this personal. I respond accordingly. We stepped out into the cold November night. The street was quiet, the brownstone behind us secure. Ahead lay the embassy, midnight, and whatever trap was waiting. Nero Wolfe was going to war. The taxi dropped us 2 blocks from the embassy at 11:50. Wolfe had insisted on this. Arriving too precisely at midnight would suggest compliance. Arriving slightly early suggested control. Small details mattered in games like this. The financial district at night was a different city. Empty plazas, darkened office towers, the occasional late worker scurrying toward the subway. The East River churned black beyond the buildings, and a cold wind carried the smell of salt and diesel. Saul is in position, I said, checking my watch. Kramer's men are stationed on Water Street and Pearl. If things go sideways, they will not. Wolfe's voice held that absolute certainty he deployed when he was either completely right or spectacularly wrong. We are expected. Someone has arranged this performance. We will watch it play out. And if they decide we're loose ends, then you will shoot them, and I will critique your aim afterward. We rounded the corner. The embassy rose before us, its Art Deco facade lit by strategic spotlights, flags hanging limp in the still air. A single figure waited at the entrance. Dmitri Kessler. He stood under the portico, wearing a heavy overcoat, his breath visible in the cold. As we approached, he checked his watch, a gesture of impatience or nervousness. I couldn't tell which. Mr. Wolfe, Mr. Goodwin, you came. His voice carried surprise despite the formal greeting. Your invitation was emphatic, Wolfe said. Discourtesy would have been rude. I sent no invitation. No? Then we appear to have been manipulated by the same party. Inconvenient. Wolfe gestured toward the door. Shall we discover who arranged this appointment? Kessler hesitated, then unlocked the embassy entrance. I received a telegram this afternoon. Anonymous. It said if I wanted to know who killed Gregor Landau, I should be here at midnight. How public-spirited of them. I followed Wolfe inside. You didn't think to call the police? And say what? That I received an anonymous message, after I've spent the last 4 days trying to keep this matter quiet. Kessler locked the door behind us. Besides, the telegram said that if police were involved, evidence would disappear. I had to come alone. You're not alone now, I pointed out. No, I'm not. He looked at Wolfe with something approaching respect. When I heard you were investigating, I knew you wouldn't ignore tonight, so I waited. We stood in the darkened lobby, marble and chrome gleaming in emergency lighting. The building felt hollow, abandoned. Somewhere above us, footsteps echoed. The roof, Kessler said. The telegram specified roof access. This way. He led us to the elevator. As we rose through 4 floors, Wolfe spoke quietly. Mr. Kessler, was it you whom Gregor Landau confronted last Thursday? Kessler's shoulders stiffened. Yes. About what, specifically? About me. A pause. About my father. The elevator stopped. We stepped into a 4th-floor hallway. Explain, Wolfe commanded. My father worked for this embassy from 1943 to 1948. Communications officer. He helped develop the Starlight protocols. After the war, he emigrated to America, married my mother, had me. He died 15 years ago. Kessler's voice was tight. Gregor found records suggesting my father had been selling intelligence during the war, using the very codes he'd helped create. And you inherited his shame, Wolfe said. I inherited his code books. They were in his effects. I kept them as, I don't know, historical curiosity. I never used them, never intended to. He stopped at a stairwell door marked roof access, but 3 months ago, someone contacted me. They had evidence of my father's crimes. They said if I didn't cooperate, they'd expose everything, destroy my career, my reputation. Blackmail, I said. Yes, they wanted access to embassy archives, specific files, old personnel records, diplomatic correspondence. Nothing current, nothing classified, just historical material that could be assembled into a narrative of wartime espionage. He put his hand on the door handle. I gave them what they wanted. I thought it would end there. It never ends, Wolfe said. Blackmail is a perpetual harvest. What changed? Gregor discovered discrepancies, files that had been accessed without proper logging. He traced it to me, confronted me. Thursday afternoon, I tried to explain. He wouldn't listen, said he was taking everything to the ambassador Monday morning. So you killed him, I suggested. No, Kessler spun to face us. I swear to you, I did not. I was desperate. Yes, frightened. But I'm not a murderer. When I heard Gregor was dead Friday morning, I was horrified. Then the telegram started arriving. Your office, my office, eventually my home. Someone was orchestrating this, using both Gregor's investigation and my complicity as pieces in a larger game. Wolfe studied him. Do you know who is blackmailing you? No. All contact has been through coded telegrams and dead drops. Payment in cash, documents left in specified locations. I never saw anyone. Until tonight. Until tonight, Kessler opened the roof access door. Cold air rushed in. They said the final exchange would happen here. They'd return the evidence against my father. I'd provide the last documents they needed, and it would end. You believed them? I had no choice. We climbed the stairs, narrow, utilitarian, lit by bare bulbs. At the top, another door opened onto the embassy roof. The view was spectacular. Manhattan's southern tip spread before us, the East River flowing dark to our right. Brooklyn's lights beyond, and above it all a sky full of stars impossibly bright despite the city's glow. The roof itself was functional, air conditioning units, ventilation shafts, a small maintenance shed, and in the center, near the edge overlooking the river, stood a woman. She turned as we emerged, mid-40s, elegant even in practical clothing, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. In her hand was a leather briefcase. Dimitri, she said. Her accent was refined, European. You brought guests. They came on their own. Kessler moved forward. Where are the documents? Here. She lifted the briefcase. Everything your father did. Every transaction. Every secret sold. All the evidence that could destroy you. As promised. And you want what in return? The last file, number 73, Communications Personnel, 1946. You know where it is. Kessler pulled an envelope from his coat. Here, take it and leave. Not yet. The woman's gaze shifted to Wolfe. Nero Wolfe. I knew you'd come. You're predictable in your unpredictability. And you are? Wolfe's voice was mild. A collector. Someone who understands that information has value far beyond its immediate use. That old secrets properly contextualized become new weapons. She smiled. Did you solve the telegrams, Mr. Wolfe? I solved nothing. I was merely invited to witness a transaction. More than witness, you're here to verify, to lend credibility. When the story breaks, as it will, through carefully placed leaks, the famous Nero Wolfe will confirm that evidence existed, that exchanges occurred, that the Starlight protocols were revived for espionage. She set down the briefcase. You're my insurance policy. The world will believe you. I believe nothing until I examine evidence. Then examine. She opened the briefcase. I moved closer, Wolfe beside me. Inside were photographs, documents, bank records, telegram copies, all meticulously organized, all damning. Kessler's father, the woman continued, sold military intelligence to 3 different buyers during the war, enough to compromise operations, cost lives. He was never caught because he used the Starlight protocols, unbreakable at the time. After the war, he fled to America, changed his identity slightly, started fresh, but the evidence remained in scattered archives. Which you assembled, Wolfe said. Which I was paid to assemble. By someone who wants this story public. Someone with an agenda. She took the envelope from Kessler. And now I have everything needed to publish a comprehensive exposé. The scandal will destroy the embassy's credibility, raise questions about wartime alliances, perhaps even affect current diplomatic relations. Who paid you? I asked. She laughed. I'm a professional. I don't reveal clients. You revealed yourself, Wolfe said quietly. You came here personally. An error. Not an error. A necessity. This exchange required trust. Trust requires presence. She glanced at her watch. And now I must go. A boat waits at Pier 17. In 30 minutes I'll be beyond your reach. She started to turn. That's when Saul Panzer stepped out from behind the maintenance shed, holding a camera. I wouldn't, he said pleasantly. I've photographed this entire conversation, every word, every document you've displayed, evidence. The woman froze. Her hand moved toward her coat. And I've got a gun, I added, displaying the .28, which trumps whatever you're reaching for. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Wolfe spoke, his voice carrying across the rooftop with surprising authority. Madam, you have made several miscalculations. First, you assumed I would serve as your unwitting accomplice. I do not. Second, you believed Dmitri Kessler was isolated and desperate. He was, until I provided alternative options. Third, you came here because your client demanded proof of delivery. That suggests they do not entirely trust you. You know nothing about my client. On the contrary, I know everything. Wolfe gestured toward the stairwell. Inspector Kramer, if you would join us. Kramer emerged from the shadows, followed by 2 officers. He'd been there all along, positioned during our conversation. Fourth miscalculation, Wolfe continued. You assumed your performance was private. It was not. And fifth, most critically, you believed the documents in that briefcase were valuable. They are not. They are forgeries. The woman's expression finally cracked. Impossible. Quite possible. Mr. Kessler's father kept no records of his crimes. The documents you assembled were created from circumstantial fragments, arranged to suggest guilt where none existed. They are convincing. I grant you that. But they will not survive serious scrutiny. You have sold your client fiction. Then why? She stopped herself. Why did Mr. Kessler cooperate? Wolfe finished. Because I advised him to. Because the only way to identify your client was to allow this exchange to proceed. You were never the target. You were merely the messenger. And now, he nodded to Kramer, Inspector. Kramer moved forward. You're under arrest for the murder of Gregor Landau." "I didn't kill him." The woman's composure shattered. "I'm a researcher, not a killer. I was hired to collect information, nothing more." "Then who killed him?" Kramer demanded. She looked at Kessler, then at Wolfe, then at the river. Finally, "I don't know. My client arranged everything through intermediaries. I never met them, never spoke directly. Everything was telegrams and dead drops." "Convenient," I said. "It's true. I was told Landau would be handled. I didn't know they meant murder. When I heard he was dead, I tried to back out. They threatened me, said if I didn't complete the exchange tonight, I'd be next." Wolfe sighed. "Archie, who is the only person who has appeared at every crucial juncture of this case, who had access to Landau's office, the embassy archives, and the information necessary to orchestrate these events." I thought back through the week. Embassy visits, missing files, telegrams delivered with impossible precision. "Ingred Kohler," I said slowly. "The administrative director." Wolfe nodded. "The person who controls access to all embassy facilities, who maintains records of every visitor, every file accessed, every communication sent. The invisible administrator whom everyone trusts and nobody questions." Kessler's face went pale. "Ingrid, but she's been here for 20 years. She's beyond suspicion." "Which makes her ideal," Wolfe said. "Inspector, I suggest you visit Miss Kohler's residence immediately. You will likely find evidence of her connection to this scheme, perhaps financial records, perhaps communication with our collector here." Kramer was already on his radio, dispatching units. The woman with the briefcase looked defeated. "You're wrong about one thing, Mr. Wolfe. The documents aren't forgeries. Some of them are real, and the story will come out eventually, with or without me." "Perhaps, but tonight it ends here." Wolfe turned toward the stairs. "Archie, I wish to go home. This wind is abominable." We didn't go straight home. Kramer wanted statements. The woman, whose name was Petra Lindström, Swedish national, freelance intelligence analyst, was being processed, and Kessler was cooperating fully in exchange for immunity. It was 2:30 a.m. when I finally unlocked the brownstone door. The Dobermans greeted us with restrained enthusiasm, Caesar leading, the others circling, tails wagging slightly. They'd been alert but calm, Fritz reported. "No incidents." "Thank you, Fritz," Wolfe said. "Bed." "There is cold beer in the refrigerator," Fritz offered hopefully. "Morning. Sleep first." Wolfe climbed the stairs with the careful dignity of exhaustion. I stayed downstairs, too wired to sleep. I poured myself a short bourbon, sat in the office with Apollo at my feet, and reviewed the night. We'd caught Petra Lindström. We'd exposed Kessler's blackmail. We'd probably solved Landau's murder. But something nagged at me, a loose thread I couldn't quite identify. The telegrams, 3 of them, delivered with perfect timing to our brownstone. How had Ingrid Kohler known our address? How had she known we'd investigate? Apollo's head came up suddenly, ears alert. A moment later, Mars appeared in the doorway, followed by Minerva. Their attention was fixed on the front of the house. I stood, bourbon forgotten. The .38 was still in my shoulder holster. I moved to the window. Outside, across the street, a figure stood under a streetlight, just standing, watching. I couldn't make out features, but the posture was wrong, too still, too patient. The figure raised one hand in what might have been a wave or a salute, then turned and walked away, disappearing around the corner. Caesar growled softly behind me, a sound of warning, not threat. The Dobermans had sensed what I'd just seen, someone monitoring the brownstone, someone who'd been there all along. I locked the front door, engaged the new deadbolts Wolfe had installed, and checked every window. The bulletproof glass reflected my paranoid face back at me. "Good dogs," I told them, "keep watching." They settled into guard positions, Caesar by the front door, Mars at the office entrance, Apollo in the hall, Minerva on the stairs, Diana by the kitchen. Instinctive perimeter defense. I went upstairs finally, at 3 a.m., and slept with my door open and the .38 on the nightstand. Tuesday morning arrived with frost and headlines. Quentyn Blackwood had worked through the night, and the morning papers carried his story: embassy scandal, murder, blackmail, and wartime espionage. The phone started ringing at 8 a.m. Reporters, prosecutors, the Calvarian ambassador, demanding to speak with Wolfe. Fritz fielded calls with diplomatic deflection, while Wolfe remained in the plant rooms until 11. When he finally descended, he looked refreshed. What chaos have I wrought? Kramer arrested Ingred Kohler at 4 a.m., I reported. She's confessed to coordinating the scheme but denies murder. Says she hired Petra Lindstrom to collect the documents, arrange the blackmail of Kessler, but someone else killed Landau. She won't say who. Because she doesn't know. Wolfe settled behind his desk. Or because she's protecting her actual employer. She claimed she was acting alone, wanted money, saw opportunity in old files. Preposterous. Ingrid Kohler is a bureaucrat, not a criminal mastermind. Someone hired her, promised payment, provided instructions. She executed a plan created by another. He opened his first beer of the day. What of Petra Lindstrom? Cooperating. She's given Kramer everything. Dead drop locations, payment methods, communication codes. All of it points back to Kohler. But Kohler insists her instructions came via anonymous telegram. Dead end. Wolfe drank thoughtfully. Archie, someone stood outside our brownstone last night. You saw them? I did. How did you know? Caesar informed me this morning. His agitation was specific. Wolfe set down his beer. We have solved the surface mystery, the blackmail, the document collection, the embassy scandal. But the deeper question remains. Who orchestrated this entire affair? Who stood to gain from exposing 70-year-old crimes? Someone with a political agenda. Possibly. Or someone with a personal vendetta. Or, he paused, or someone testing us. Testing what? Our capabilities, our discretion, our willingness to involve ourselves in matters of state. He drummed his fingers on the desk. Someone wanted to know if Nero Wolfe could be recruited, manipulated, or eliminated. This entire case may have been reconnaissance. The thought was chilling. So what do we do? We wait. If I'm correct, they will contact us directly now that the preliminary games are concluded. He picked up his book. In the meantime, normal business resumes. The orchids require attention. Fritz is preparing sweetbreads for lunch. And you must complete your report for Kramer. He will need documentation for the prosecutors. Just like that? Back to normal? What alternative do you suggest? Hiding? Abandoning the brownstone? Living in fear? Wolfe's eyes were hard. I do not fear shadows, Archie. I wait for them to step into light. And when they do, I crush them. Wednesday afternoon, the Calvarian ambassador requested a meeting at the brownstone. Wolfe agreed, not out of courtesy, but because refusal would suggest weakness. Ambassador Gregor Vasilev arrived at 3 p.m. in a limousine with diplomatic plates. He was 60, silver-haired, with the bearing of a career statesman who'd survived multiple regime changes. He came alone, no aides, no security, a calculated gesture of trust. Fritz showed him to the office. Wolfe did not rise. Ambassador, Wolfe said, beer. No, thank you. Vasilev sat in the red leather chair, adjusted his perfect suit, and met Wolfe's gaze with equal weight. I come to apologize and to thank you. For the complications this matter has caused you, for the danger to which you were exposed, and for revealing a cancer within my embassy. He spoke with precise English, each word chosen carefully. Ingrid Kohler has been with us for 2 decades. She was trusted absolutely. Her betrayal wounds deeply. You believe her story, that she acted alone for financial gain? I believe she has told us what she chooses to tell. Whether that is truth. Vasilev spread his hands. Your Inspector Kramer suspects otherwise, as do I. Then why accept her confession? Because the alternative, that my embassy harbors additional traitors, that this conspiracy extends beyond one bitter administrator, is diplomatically catastrophic. He leaned forward. I am a practical man, Mr. Wolfe. Sometimes we accept convenient lies because inconvenient truths would destroy everything. A philosophy of expedience. A philosophy of survival. Vasilev pulled an envelope from his jacket. I'm told you do not accept cases involving international politics, that you avoided this case until circumstances forced your hand. Is this accurate? It is. I wish to hire you anyway. Wolfe's eyebrows rose fractionally. For what purpose? To discover the truth you have already deduced but cannot prove. To identify who truly orchestrated these events. Not for prosecution, that ship has sailed, but for knowledge, so that I may protect my embassy from future manipulation. He placed the envelope on Wolfe's desk. $50,000, retainer, non-refundable, whether you accept or not. Wolfe didn't touch the envelope. Why me? Because you are the only investigator in America whom I trust completely. You cannot be bought, cannot be intimidated, cannot be manipulated. These qualities are rare, priceless, even. Vasilev stood. I do not expect an answer now. Consider my offer. If you choose to investigate, you will have complete access to embassy resources. If you choose to decline, keep the money as compensation for damages. There were no damages. No? Your peace was disturbed. Your name appears in tomorrow's papers. Your privacy was invaded. These are damages, Mr. Wolfe, significant ones. He moved toward the door. One more thing. Gregor Landau was a good man. He deserved better than murder for discovering an old man's crimes. If you learn who killed him, truly killed him, not the convenient scapegoat, I wish to know, even if that knowledge must remain private. After Vasilev left, Wolfe sat in silence for 10 minutes. Then he opened the envelope. $51,000 bills, crisp and sequential. Are you taking the case? I asked. No. He resealed the envelope. Return this tomorrow with my compliments. Tell the ambassador I appreciate his confidence, but cannot accept payment for incomplete work. You don't want to know who was really behind this. I already know, or suspect strongly enough that knowledge and certainty are functionally identical, but proving it would require resources and risks I'm unwilling to commit. He set the envelope aside. Some mysteries are better left officially unsolved, even when privately understood. That's not like you. It is precisely like me. I solve puzzles that interest me, ignore those that don't, and refuse to become a tool of political convenience. He rang for beer. The matter is closed, Archie. Let it rest. But it didn't rest. Not entirely. Thursday evening, Wolfe assembled everyone in the office. Inspector Kramer, still smouldering about political interference. Quentyn Blackwood, notebook ready. Helena Vasari, returned from the safe house. Dmitri Kessler, no longer deputy chief but not yet officially dismissed. Saul Panzer, leaning against the bookshelf, and me, at my desk, taking notes. The Dobermans were present too, Caesar beside Wolfe's chair, the others positioned around the room like living furniture. It was the most crowded the office had been in months. You're not taking the ambassador's case, Kramer said. Why this meeting? Because you all deserve answers, Wolfe replied. Official answers may satisfy courts and newspapers. True answers satisfy minds. I offer the latter. He settled into his chair, arranged papers before him, and began. Gregor Landau was murdered, not because of what he discovered, but because of what he represented. Integrity in a system designed to tolerate moral compromise. 3 months ago, someone approached Ingred Kohler with a proposal. They knew of her financial difficulties, a sick sister, medical bills, debts accumulated over years. They offered money in exchange for simple tasks, accessing old files, facilitating certain document requests, maintaining silence. Who approached her? Kramer demanded. A representative, not the principal. Intelligence services and criminal enterprises rarely expose leadership. They use cutouts, intermediaries, layers of deniability. Kohler dealt with a messenger, never the source. What was the goal? To assemble a narrative of wartime espionage that could be weaponized diplomatically. 70 years after the fact, details of Calvarian collaboration with various intelligence services during the war could be used to embarrass current governments, strain alliances, provide leverage for negotiations. Wolfe gestured at the papers. The Starlight protocols were merely the mechanism. The true goal was creating scandal. Then why kill Landau? Helena asked quietly. Why not just leak the documents? Because Landau was doing what good investigators do, verifying. Had he completed his research, he would have discovered that the documents were partially fabricated, real telegrams mixed with reconstructed evidence. The story would have collapsed under scrutiny. His murder served two purposes, silencing an inconvenient truth-seeker and creating a martyr whose death would lend credibility to the scandal. Kessler spoke up. But I was blackmailed. My father's crimes were exaggerated. Your father was a communications officer, yes. He had access to codes, yes. But the evidence of actual espionage was circumstantial, reconstructed from fragments. Petra Lindström is skilled at creating convincing narratives from incomplete data. You were blackmailed, Not because you were guilty, but because you could be manipulated. So who killed Landau? Blackwood asked, pen poised. Wolfe was silent for a moment. Ingrid Kohler arranged the murder, but she did not commit it. The physical act was performed by a professional, likely someone with diplomatic immunity, someone who could enter the country, execute a task and leave without trace. Kohler provided access, timing, opportunity. Her handler provided the assassin. And the handler? Kramer pressed. Unknown, unprovable. Perhaps a foreign intelligence service seeking to destabilize Calvarian-American relations. Perhaps a private entity trading in political chaos. Perhaps a rival within Calvaria's government. The answer, Inspector, is hidden behind layers we cannot penetrate without international cooperation, that will never be granted. Kramer's jaw worked around his cigar. So we've got Kohler for conspiracy, Lindstrom for fraud, but the actual killer walks free. Justice is imperfect. It always has been. That's not good enough. It must be, unless you wish to spend years navigating diplomatic immunity claims and jurisdictional battles, while the trail grows cold. Wolfe leaned back. Sometimes we must accept partial victory. Landau's killer remains free, but the conspiracy is exposed, the embassy is secured, and future victims are prevented. It is not satisfying. It is, however, pragmatic. Helena spoke up, her voice steady. What about the telegrams sent to your brownstone? Why you? An excellent question. I believe someone in the conspiracy's hierarchy saw opportunity in my involvement. Perhaps they hoped I would solve the case quickly, providing independent verification that would satisfy the press. Perhaps they hoped I would be slower, allowing the scandal to develop organically. Perhaps, he paused, perhaps they simply wanted to test whether I could be useful. Recruited. And can you? She asked. No. The word hung in the air, absolute and final. Wolfe continued. The telegrams were designed to intrigue me sufficiently to investigate, but not so overtly that I would recognize the manipulation. They succeeded partially, I investigated, but failed ultimately. I will not be anyone's tool. Saul cleared his throat. So what happens now? Officially, Ingrid Kohler will be prosecuted for conspiracy and accessory to murder. She will serve time, though perhaps less than deserved, in exchange for cooperation. Petra Lindstrom will be deported and blacklisted from American intelligence work. Dmitry Kessler will resign quietly and relocate, his reputation damaged but not destroyed. The embassy will claim the matter resolved and move forward. And unofficially, Blackwood asked. Unofficially, someone in Europe laughs at how close we came to full exposure, while remaining just far enough away to escape consequences. They note what worked and what failed. They plan their next operation with lessons learned. And the game continues. Kramer stood abruptly. I hate this. I know. You're okay with it? I am never okay with unpunished murder, but I am resigned to reality. Wolfe met Kramer's eyes. Inspector, you've been an honest cop for 30 years. You know better than anyone that perfect justice is mythology. We settle for what's achievable and sleep as well as we can. Kramer stalked out without another word. The others filtered out gradually, Blackwood to write his follow-up article, Helena back to her careful life, Kessler to an uncertain future. Saul lingered long enough to accept payment for his surveillance work, then vanished as quietly as always. Only I remained, sitting at my desk, watching Wolfe pour his 7th beer of the evening. You lied, I said finally. About what? You know exactly who orchestrated this. You've known since Tuesday, maybe earlier. Wolfe drank thoughtfully. Your point? My point is, you chose not to reveal it. That's not like you. You're many things, but indirect isn't usually one of them. Archie, there are times when truth serves justice, and there are times when truth serves only vanity, the satisfaction of being correct. This is the latter. He set down the glass. Yes, I have a strong suspicion. No, I cannot prove it beyond reasonable doubt. And yes, revelation would cause complications far exceeding any benefit. Therefore, I remain silent. But, no buts. The case is closed. The client, though I refused the ambassador's case, is satisfied. The immediate threats are neutralized. We return to normal business. He opened his book with finality. Tomorrow I have 3 new phalaenopsis arriving. They require attention. The world continues. So do we. I knew that tone. Further argument was futile. But late that night, unable to sleep, I went to the office and found Wolfe still reading. Caesar raised his head from beside the chair but didn't rise. "Can't sleep?" Wolfe asked without looking up. "Too many loose ends." "There are always loose ends. That's the nature of reality. We solve what we can and live with the rest." He finally looked at me. "You want to know who I suspect?" "I do." "Very well. I believe the orchestration came from within Calvaria's current government, a faction seeking to discredit the embassy's diplomatic corps in order to replace them with loyalists. The evidence of wartime collaboration was useful, not for its accuracy, but for its plausibility. A scandal of this nature provides justification for wholesale personnel changes. That's incredibly cynical. That's international politics. Governments devour their own regularly. He closed his book. The assassin was likely provided by a third party, a contractor specializing in deniable operations. The telegrams to our brownstone were designed to ensure the story developed with investigative credibility. And the money trail, if followed far enough, would lead through shell companies and diplomatic accounts directly back to a ministry building in Calvaria's capital. And we're just letting them get away with it? We are not international prosecutors, Archie. We are private investigators operating within a single jurisdiction. The scope of what we've uncovered exceeds our authority by magnitudes. He stood, moving toward the stairs. Sometimes wisdom is knowing when to stop digging. Tonight is such a time. Sleep well. He climbed the stairs, Caesar following, leaving me alone in the office with 4 remaining Dobermans and the ghosts of unsolved elements. I sat there for another hour, thinking about justice and pragmatism, truth and silence, and the cold calculus that governed Nero Wolfe's brilliant mind. Finally, I went to bed. The brownstone was quiet. The dogs were vigilant. The city beyond our bulletproof windows churned with 10,000 unsolved mysteries. We'd solved one. Sort of. Mostly. It would have to be enough. Friday morning arrived with unexpected sunshine, rare for late November in New York. I woke to the smell of Fritz's coffee and the sound of Wolfe's elevator descending at precisely 11 o'clock. When I entered the office, he was already positioned behind his desk, his latest book propped open, a fresh bottle of beer at hand. Everything back to normal, as if the previous week had been a minor detour rather than a brush with international espionage and murder. "Archie," he said without preamble, "the ambassador's money?" I retrieved the envelope from the safe. "I'll return it this morning." "No. Keep 5,000. Distribute it among our expenses, your time, Saul's work, Fritz's disrupted schedule. The remainder goes back with an invoice stating the same. You're billing him." "I'm being honest. We performed services. We deserve compensation, but I will not accept payment for incomplete work or unsolicited involvement." He turned a page. "Return the envelope with a clear accounting. Professional courtesy." I prepared the paperwork while Wolfe read. The morning settled into familiar rhythms. Phone calls about a potential insurance fraud case, Fritz preparing lunch, the Dobermans rotating through their patrol routines. At noon, the mail arrived. Among the bills and advertisements was a single envelope, cream-colored, expensive stock, addressed to Nero Wolfe in elegant handwriting. I brought it to his desk. He examined it without opening. "From Calvaria," he said, noting the postmark. "Mailed Monday, before our embassy visit. Could be another telegram. Open it carefully." I slit the envelope. Inside was not a telegram but a single sheet of formal stationery bearing the Calvarian national seal. The message was brief, handwritten in fountain pen. "Mr. Wolfe, if you are reading this, I am likely dead. I have arranged for this letter to be mailed in that event. You do not know me, but I know of you. Your reputation suggests a man who values truth over convenience. I hope this proves accurate. I have discovered evidence of conspiracy within my embassy. Not the petty crimes of bitter administrators, but something deeper. The revival of Starlight protocols was not for blackmail or scandal. It was a test. Someone is rebuilding old networks, assessing whether wartime channels could be reactivated for modern purposes. I do not know who. I suspect my suspicions are known, which places me in danger. If this letter reaches you, investigate quietly. Trust no one in official positions. The conspiracy reaches higher than embassy staff. The key is in the archives. File 73 contains not just personnel records, but original correspondence from 1946, letters discussing post-war intelligence arrangements that were supposed to be destroyed. Someone preserved them, someone is using them now. I regret involving you, but you are the only person I trust to uncover the truth without being silenced. With respect. Gregor Landau. Wolfe read it twice, then set it down gently. He knew, I said. He knew he was going to die. He suspected, and he planned accordingly. Wolfe stared at the letter. This confirms my assessment. The conspiracy was not about scandal. It was about resurrecting old intelligence networks. Someone wants to know if the channels still exist, if contacts remain exploitable, if the methods still work. For what purpose? That, Archie, is the question that will keep me awake. He folded the letter carefully. File this. Not in our case records, in the personal safe. If anyone asks, we never received it. Why? Because Gregor Landau was a careful man. If he wrote this letter, he wrote others. If he arranged for this to reach me posthumously, he arranged for information to reach other parties. This is not an appeal for investigation. It is an insurance policy. His way of ensuring the conspiracy could not simply die with him. So we do nothing. We do what Landau requested. We investigate quietly. We trust no one in official positions. And we wait to see who else received posthumous letters. That's not doing nothing. No, Wolfe agreed. It's doing everything with the appearance of nothing. There's a difference. Inspector Kramer arrived at 3 o'clock, unannounced and visibly frustrated. Two things, he announced, dropping into the red leather chair. First, Ingrid Kohler is talking, really talking. She's given us names, dead drops, payment schedules. It's bigger than we thought. The blackmail operation ran for 3 months, involved at least 8 people, and moved $200,000 through various accounts. And second, Wolfe prompted. Second, the State Department called the commissioner this morning, wants everything related to the Landau case sealed, national security, diplomatic sensitivity, all the usual excuses for covering up embarrassment. Kramer glared at his unlit cigar. I'm being told to close the case. Kohler pleads to reduce charges. Lindstrom gets deported. Kessler gets immunity for cooperation, and everyone pretends it was just an isolated incident. You're not satisfied. Of course I'm not satisfied. A man was murdered. The killer is free. Justice. He stopped himself. But I'm also a cop with a pension and a chain of command. I close the case. A wise decision. Easy for you to say. You don't answer to bureaucrats. Kramer stood. Look, I know you know more than you've said. I know you've figured out angles I can't even see. If there's something I should know, something that would change the calculus, you'd tell me, right? Wolfe considered this. Inspector, if I possessed evidence of additional crimes occurring within your jurisdiction, and if such evidence could be acted upon without international complications, yes, I would inform you immediately. At present, I possess only theories and suspicions. Neither arrests criminals. So that's a no. That's a realistic assessment of our respective limitations. After Kramer left, Wolfe sat in brooding silence. The afternoon light slanted through the windows, catching dust motes and making the bulletproof glass shimmer slightly. Outside, West 35th Street conducted its ordinary business. Delivery trucks, pedestrians, the rhythms of urban life that continued regardless of conspiracies and murders. I dislike loose ends, Wolfe said finally. I noticed. More specifically, I dislike cases where the true villain remains free while substitutes are punished. You said we had to accept partial victory. I said we must accept it. I did not say I liked it. He opened a fresh beer. File Landau's letter securely. Watch the newspapers for follow-up stories. Note any unusual diplomatic appointments or embassy personnel changes in the coming months. Someone benefited from this chaos. When they move to consolidate power, they will expose themselves. And then we reconsider our position. He picked up his book with finality. But not today. Today we return to routine. Fritz has prepared a remarkable lunch, venison with juniper sauce. I intend to enjoy it without the contamination of unsolved mysteries. We ate lunch at 1:30, just the two of us, since Fritz preferred serving to dining. The venison was indeed remarkable. Wolfe consumed 3 helpings and 4 bottles of beer. The conversation covered orchids, baseball, the decline of decent bookbinding, and a dozen other topics unrelated to murder or espionage. At 4 o'clock, he went up to the plant rooms for his afternoon inspection. I remained in the office, catching up on paperwork and routine correspondence. The Dobermans cycled through Mars at my feet for 20 minutes, then Diana, then Apollo. Their presence was comforting, a reminder that some security measures were reliable. At 6 o'clock, the phone rang. Unknown number, male voice with a faint European accent. Nero Wolfe's office. Mr. Goodwin, a message for your employer. Tell him the stars appreciate his discretion. Tell him we will not forget his silence. Tell him that true professionals recognize each other across distances. A pause. Tell him to watch the night sky. Some constellations never fade. The line went dead. I sat holding the receiver, pulse elevated, mind racing. The caller had known my name, had known Wolfe's habits, had referenced the case obliquely enough to avoid explicit admission, but directly enough to confirm involvement. This was the principal, not a cutout or intermediary. The person behind the entire conspiracy, calling to acknowledge Wolfe's decision to remain silent about their identity. When Wolfe descended at 6, I told him about the call, repeating it word for word. He listened without interruption, his expression unreadable. When I finished, he was silent for a full minute. Then, confirmation of what you suspected. Of everything. That call was professional courtesy, one intelligence operative to another, acknowledging skillful maneuvering. They're telling me they know I identified them. They're confirming I made the correct decision in remaining silent, and they're establishing communication for potential future contact. You're not an intelligence operative. In their world, anyone who identifies them without exposing them is effectively operational. It's a compliment, though an unsettling one. He moved to his desk. Note the call in the daybook. If they contact us again, we'll know this wasn't an isolated gesture. And if they do contact us again, then we'll decide then whether to engage or refuse. For now, we acknowledge receipt and continue normal operations. He glanced at the windows, where evening was settling over Manhattan. Fritz is preparing salmon for dinner. Let's enjoy it while contemplating the stars, since we've been advised they're significant. That evening, after dinner, I found Wolfe in the office reading Brillat Savarin again, with Caesar asleep beside his chair and the other Dobermans distributed through the brownstone in their night watch positions. You know, I said, settling at my desk, most people would consider this case closed. Most people lack imagination. And you consider it open. I consider it dormant. The immediate threats are resolved. The secondary questions remain unanswered but stable. We watch. We wait. We remain alert. He turned a page. That's often the nature of intelligence work, Archie. Not the dramatic revelations of popular fiction, but the patient accumulation of data and the wisdom to know when action serves purpose versus when action serves only ego. So we're just waiting. We are living, which includes being prepared. He glanced at the dogs. I've increased brownstone security. The new locks are merely the beginning. Theodore is installing additional surveillance in the plant rooms next week. Fritz has agreed to vary his shopping routines, and I'm considering acquiring another Doberman. A sixth would complete the defensive array. You're worried. I'm cautious. Someone very skilled has taken an interest in us. That interest may be friendly professional respect, or it may be long-term assessment for future exploitation. I prefer to assume the latter and be pleasantly surprised if proven wrong. Not exactly relaxing. I've never found relaxation valuable. He set down his book. But I have found routine valuable. Tomorrow is Saturday. No clients scheduled. The plant rooms require attention. Fritz will serve his excellent pot roast for dinner. You will likely attend some sporting event or musical performance. The brownstone will stand as it has stood for decades, proof against the chaos outside. And if chaos comes inside? He smiled. Rare, brief, genuine. Then we will have 5 Dobermans, bulletproof glass, reinforced doors, and 2 armed residents of excellent aim and questionable temperament. I believe we'll manage. Saturday evening, Lily Rowan called, and we went to see Duke Ellington at a club in Harlem. The music was transcendent, the crowd electric, and for 3 hours I didn't think about telegrams or murders or international conspiracies. When I returned to the brownstone at 2 a.m., Wolfe was still awake, sitting in the office with a single lamp illuminated, staring at nothing. Can't sleep? I asked. Thinking, he gestured to the chair beside his desk. Archie, I've made a decision. About accepting the ambassador's case after all. I sat down. I thought you refused. I did, but Gregor Landor's letter changed my assessment. If he's correct, if the conspiracy is deeper than isolated blackmail, then investigation serves broader purpose. Not justice for his murder, which is likely unachievable, but prevention of future exploitation. You're going to track down the people behind this. Quietly, carefully, without official sanction or publicity. I will use the ambassador's retainer as cover, conduct research through Saul and other contacts, and determine the full scope of the network being rebuilt. He met my eyes. This will be dangerous. Whoever called yesterday was warning us as much as acknowledging us. They want us to know they're watching, that we're on their radar. So we're walking into something worse than what we just finished. We're acknowledging reality. The conspiracy didn't end with Kohler's arrest. It merely changed form. If we ignore it, we're complicit. If we investigate, we're at risk. I prefer the latter. Of course you do. Are you willing to participate? I cannot order you. This exceeds normal detective work by significant margins. I thought about Gregor Landau, murdered for pursuing truth. About Helena Vasari, targeted for helping an investigation. About the watcher across the street, and the phone call, and the feeling that we'd solved a murder while missing the deeper crime. I'm in, I said. Wouldn't miss it. Wolfe nodded once. Then on Monday, we begin properly. For now, sleep. Tomorrow is Sunday, my day of rest and your day of leisure. Let's enjoy normalcy while we can. I went upstairs finally, exhausted but oddly energized. The brownstone creaked and settled around me. The Dobermans maintained their watch. Outside, Manhattan slept or pretended to. And somewhere in Europe or Washington, or perhaps just across the city, someone who'd orchestrated murder and conspiracy was watching the stars, knowing that Nero Wolfe had decided not to let the matter rest after all. The game had only just begun. But Wolfe was right about one thing. We'd sleep tonight, because tomorrow brought its own challenges. And being rested was the first rule of staying alive in a profession where people played for keeps. I closed my eyes and dreamed of Starlight. Sunday afternoon, 3 p.m. The brownstone quiet in that particular way that only Sunday afternoons can achieve. No appointments, no clients, no emergencies, demanding immediate attention. I found Wolfe in the plant rooms, misting his cattleyas with the delicate spray bottle Theodore had brought from Switzerland. The humidity was perfect, the temperature precisely controlled, the light filtered through shades that cost more than most people's monthly salary. The Miltania is recovering, Theodore said, pointing to a pale orchid near the east bench. The roots took hold. You were right about the potting medium. I'm usually right about orchids. Wolfe adjusted a pot fractionally. They're logical, unlike people. I waited until Theodore moved to the far greenhouse before speaking. Kramer called. Kohler's official plea deal is done. 2 years minimum security, full cooperation. Name redacted from public documents. The embassy releases a statement Monday calling it an isolated incident. Convenient fictions for all parties. Except Landau. Except him. Wolfe set down the spray bottle with unusual gentleness. His letter will guide our investigation. Quietly, carefully, with patience. How long do you think this will take? Months, perhaps years. Conspiracies of this nature don't unravel quickly. They must be understood before they can be dismantled. He moved toward the elevator. But today, we rest. Come. Fritz has cold beer, and you can tell me about the Ellington performance while I pretend to care about jazz. We descended to the office. Fritz had indeed prepared cold beer, Remmer's, perfectly chilled, and a plate of the excellent cheese he'd found at that little shop on 9th Avenue. Wolfe settled into his chair, opened the first bottle, and sighed with contentment. You know, I said, most detectives would consider solving a murder in a week pretty good work. We didn't solve it. We identified conspirators and accepted compromises. That's management, not solution. The people responsible for Landau's death are being punished. Some of them, not all, not the one who matters most. He drank thoughtfully. But you're correct that progress was made. The immediate threats are neutralized. Additional investigation can proceed without urgency. That's acceptable for the moment. The Dobermans filed in one by one. Caesar first, taking his position beside Wolfe's chair. Then Mars, Apollo, Minerva and Diana, arranging themselves around the room in what I'd learned was their preferred formation. They'd been restless all week, but now they seemed calm, as if sensing that the immediate danger had passed. They knew, Wolfe said, watching them. All week they sensed the threat. Their instincts are remarkable. Better than ours. Different from ours. We rely on logic and observation. They rely on instinct and perception. Combined, we form a reasonable defense. He scratched behind Caesar's ears, a rare gesture of affection. I'm glad we installed the bulletproof glass, and the new locks, and the security upgrades. Someone very dangerous now knows this address. We must remain vigilant. You think they'll come back? I think they'll watch. Whether they act depends on our next moves. He opened his second beer, which is why we proceed carefully. Research first, action later, caution always. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, drinking beer, watching the afternoon light shift across the office. Fritz appeared with fresh-baked rolls and butter, then disappeared again. The phone didn't ring. No one knocked on the door. For a few hours, the brownstone was simply what it appeared to be, a home. You know what bothers me most? I said finally. What? That we'll never know the whole truth. We'll investigate, we'll uncover pieces, but the complete picture, who really ordered Landau's death, what they're building, why it matters, that'll always be incomplete, fuzzy around the edges. That's the nature of this work, Archie. Absolute knowledge is rare. We settle for sufficient understanding to prevent future harm. It's frustrating but honest. I prefer neat endings. Then you've chosen the wrong profession. He smiled slightly. But you haven't left it, which suggests you value truth more than neatness. Or I'm just stubborn. Also possible. Evening settled over Manhattan. Fritz announced dinner, the pot roast Wolfe had mentioned, with roasted vegetables and that potato dish, with the cheese and cream. We ate in the dining room, the 5 Dobermans lying peacefully in the hall, the brownstone secure around us. After dinner, I asked the question that had been nagging me all day. The phone call yesterday, the one about watching the stars, you said it was professional courtesy, but it was also a threat, wasn't it? A way of saying they know where we are, what we're doing, and they're watching. It was both. Professional courtesy and warning. These are not mutually exclusive in certain circles. Wolfe moved toward the office. They want us to know they respect our discretion, and they want us to know that respect has limits. If we cross certain lines, if we expose rather than investigate quietly, the courtesy will end. And then we'll discover how serious their warnings are. He settled behind his desk. But that's a problem for another day. Tonight I'm reading Brillat Savarin. Tomorrow is Monday, and the week begins anew. Life continues, as it must. I stayed in the office while he read, catching up on correspondence and routine paperwork. The brownstone was quiet except for the occasional creak of old wood settling, the distant sound of traffic, the soft breathing of dogs. At 11 p.m., Wolfe closed his book and stood. Bed. Sleep well. I usually do. Conscience is remarkably quiet when one has done what could be done and accepted what cannot be changed. He paused at the door. Archie, thank you. For what? For not pushing. For accepting that some answers take time. For trusting my judgment, even when it seems evasive. He nodded once. It's appreciated. He climbed the stairs, Caesar following, leaving me alone in the office with the remaining 4 dogs and my thoughts. I looked at the desk where those strange telegrams had first appeared. Starlight, embassy, missing keys, flowing rivers. We'd decoded the surface meaning but not the deeper truth. We'd solved the immediate mystery but not the underlying conspiracy. And yet, as Wolfe said, we'd done what could be done. Sometimes that had to be enough. I locked up the brownstone, new locks, reinforced doors, bulletproof windows. I checked the security panel Wolfe had installed last week. I made sure the dogs had water and their stations were clear. Then I went upstairs to my room, with its view of West 35th Street and the city beyond. The stars were bright tonight, unusually visible despite Manhattan's light pollution. I stood at the window for a moment, looking up, thinking about Gregor Landau and his posthumous letter, about international conspiracies and quiet warnings, about how some mysteries solved themselves while others simply endured. Tomorrow would bring new cases, new clients, new problems, The brownstone would stand as it always had, proof against the chaos outside. Wolfe would tend his orchids and drink his beer and solve puzzles with that remarkable mind. I would take notes and make phone calls and occasionally shoot people who needed shooting. Life would continue. But now we knew something we hadn't known before, that old channels could be reactivated, that wartime secrets retained power, and that someone very skilled was watching our brownstone, waiting to see what we'd do next. They'd made contact. They'd issued warnings wrapped in courtesy. They'd established terms. And Nero Wolfe had decided not to accept those terms, not entirely. He'd investigate quietly, carefully, patiently. He'd uncover truths and decide what to do with them when the time came. It might take months. It might take years. It might end in triumph or tragedy, or something messily in between. But it would end eventually. Everything did. In the meantime, we'd live, we'd work, we'd maintain the brownstone and tend the orchids and solve the cases that came through our door, because that's what we did. That's what we'd always done. And if some nights I stood at the window, looking at the stars and thinking about coded messages and midnight danger, well, that was just part of the job. The stars never lie, Wolfe had said once, paraphrasing someone wiser. Only people do. Looking up at the night sky, I thought he was probably right. The stars were what they were, distant, eternal, indifferent to human conspiracies and crimes. But people were endlessly fascinating, endlessly deceptive, endlessly capable of both brilliance and murder. And as long as that remained true, Nero Wolfe would have work, and I'd have a job. I closed the curtains finally, went to bed, and slept soundly for the first time in a week. Tomorrow would take care of itself. Tonight, the brownstone stood secure. The dogs kept watch. And somewhere in Manhattan, the city breathed its endless rhythm of life and death, crime and justice, mystery and revelation. It was enough. It had to be.